Alrighty, great stuff. So, hello everybody, and welcome to this month's QGIS Open Day. I think we're all getting excited for the FOSS4G conference coming up, but we are the most excited about the new release, 3.26. I suggest that everyone go on the QGIS Open Day channel. We have released a short video. It's about a 15-minute video that takes you sort of step by step through the changelog. It's a visual changelog. You can go and have a look and see what has changed up. And thank you to one of our viewers for giving that to us. It's absolutely amazing. And so for this session, this is an open session. This is an Ask Me Anything session with Marco, who has been a sport. And basically, we'd like to ask him just, where he sees the QGIS program going. We have a couple of new GIS members who would like to ask a couple of questions. So if you want to be involved in the meeting, I have the link in the live chat. If you'd like to ask a question for me to read out, please pop it into the live chat. Otherwise, pop into the meeting. And I will then just introduce some of the people in the room, and we can go straight on from there. So first, I'd like to hand over to Marco just to introduce himself, what he does, and just give a general introduction of what the QGIS project is and why it's a project, why it's not just a software that you can get, why it's a community. So over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Amy. Okay, I'm Marco Bernasocchi. I'm currently serving as chair for the QGIS.org association. And beside that, I manage a company called OpenGIS.ch, which is more doing development on QGIS itself. And I'm a board member of the OSGeo Foundation. So a couple of 3 hats there that give me a large insight on what is happening in the open source community. I originally started using QGIS version 0.6. And that was, I think, back in 2007, 2006, somewhere back then. Very different software than what we have now. And in 2011, I started a project called back then QGIS for mobile, I think was the first original name, but then very quickly changed to QGIS for Android because it came mainly only on Android actually, which now is well known as QField, so the mobile counterpart of QGIS with 500,000 people using it. So yes, that's a bit where I come from. I'm originally from Switzerland, live in a small mountain town, really close to nature, and I love being outside. Which is why I invented QGIS for Android, because I needed to get out of the office. So now to your other question, why is QGIS not only a software product, but it's a project? And that is, I think, a question that can be more broadly answered in why are open source tools very often projects and not just products. And that is really because you have this community part of the project that becomes extremely important when you do not have simply a company doing a product development and then selling the product. So as soon as you say, well, I want to do things in a free and open source manner, you very quickly become confronted with the question, well, do you want to do it by yourself or you want other people to help you? And if you decide for doing things by yourself, that's a fair choice, but the chance that the project will just stay a small project is much, much higher. As soon as you manage to create a project that has a community, you will amplify the speed of development, the reach of the project it will be magnified to we're not talking like ×2 or ×3, we're talking more like orders of magnitude. So you get an exponential growth of or a much stronger growth of the product itself, the more the community grows around it. So really, I think that's a very key point of an open source project, is to try to nurturing their community, because that will in return bring a lot more to the project itself.
Brilliant stuff. Alrighty, so I encourage anyone who's in the room, if you do want to ask a question over the mic, please just raise your hand. At the bottom of the screen, there's a little raise hand button that you can use. And then when you do ask your questions, just introduce yourself. Like, who are you? Are you new to the community? What are you using QGIS for, perhaps? And then go ahead and ask your question. I see that in the live chat straight from YouTube. There are a couple of comments that say it's an amazing app. Absolutely love it. I'm assuming that's for QField. And then we have a question from someone called the Snapshot Drones. And they ask, where is the best place, I'm assuming a chat room or a website or whatever, to get a full picture of how to use the QGIS software? So Marco, from your perspective, what's the best place for people to get started?
That's a good question. It's such a big project that we have so many resources. I'd say that I'll go one step back. And to me, the most important thing when you're learning a new tool is to have a thing that you want to solve with it. Because that will make you much more into the tool. So it will actually give you a motivation why you want to learn something. And if you have an issue at hand that needs a solution where QGIS can help, well, then you'll be much more likely to invest time and invest passion on it, and that will really help you out trying to get to learn the tool in a very proficient way, because you'll be much more driven by the issue you have. And once you have that, obviously the documentation of QGIS, so it's really good. We have various levels of documentation addressing different needs. I'm just pulling up some links, or maybe Amy, you can put those in the chat. So we have the documentation, which is the user manual itself. It's really about how to use QGIS. So it's really like, if you push this button, then this will happen. If you push that button, that will happen. That's one of the way to go. But then we have a QGIS training manual, which is more like issue oriented tutorials kind of thing. And then there is also, on the documentation, there is also a gentle introduction to GIS. So if you even do not know what GIS is, if you do not know what layers are, or if you still don't know really much the difference between raster and vector, so that kind of level of things we already have there. Then obviously, if you are maybe coming from the programming world and you'll be more interested into coding related to QGIS, we have all the documentation for the C++ API and for the Python API. And this is only what's in the QGIS world. So the QGIS documentation. When you start looking at tutorials, there are amazing tutorials out there from the most creative people that do a lot of work with QGIS and publish lots of information there. So there's just so much out there, or in tutorials, that it's really, really a lot to mention. But in general, if you go to the QGIS.org website for the on the documentation part, you'll find already a very good first place to start.
Brilliant stuff. I have put that link into the live chat. So if you click there, that'll take you straight to the official documentation. And of course, the QGIS project, QGIS.org website is a great place to start. I mean, that's where you download the software and can get to the documentation. Maria, I see your hand is up. Please feel free to unmute your mic, introduce yourself, and ask your question. Maria?
QGIS.org website is a great place.
You're muted, Maria, just in case.
Alrighty, I think she may be having a technical moment. So then I'd like to just open it up to the room and see if anyone has any questions. I know a couple of our interns from our group have a couple of interesting questions they'd like to ask you. So let's go for it. Again, please just put your hand up so we can go one by one. Alrighty, Roger, go for it. For some reason, I can't hear you speaking.
I cannot hear Roger.
Alrighty. Perhaps pop your question in the chat for this group and I can read it out. I think that'll be the best. I think there might be a microphone issue. Alrighty, Eli, let's see if we can hear you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi, Eli. There we go. Great stuff.
All right, perfect. Hi, my name is Eli. I'm a Katoza intern. I've just started using QGIS like 2 weeks ago. So pretty new to all of this and learning quite a lot. So basically my question is with handles with resources, getting to know QGIS. And one of the things you mentioned is having a cause or having a problem you need to solve. And it got me thinking with community development. Do you know perhaps of communities where it might be easy for someone just starting out to get into the community, whereas you would have a problem or something to, a cause to work on, which might help improve your skills and develop you as well?
Okay, I need to ask a return question. So you mean a community where you could find like you could find causes that you would like to work on, or more a community to be in that would help you with your cause?
Yes, more to be part of a community that's working towards a cause, which will also help you improve and develop on your skills.
I think that's very much a kind of a regional question. So very often people are kind of committed to things that are close to them because they are more relevant to them. Where in the sense of saying, well, if it's close, it's more relevant. Obviously, there are people that care about things that are very far as well. So it's a very it's really. There are so many causes that would benefit from people that know QGIS or that would need help. It's really hard to say where to go and look for them. There is things like HotOSM, which do a lot of work mainly with data, and obviously they are very related to humanitarian kind of things. And obviously being OSM, so OpenStreetMap, they also very close to everything that is QGIS. So it's very often AutoSM things are also things that could benefit from QGIS know-how. There are communities which are not regional. I know, for example, there is on Facebook a community that is global and has 50,000 members, and there there is also very often discussion, but it's more like, hey, I have this problem for my cause and how could I get solved? So there is a lot of those helping community that help you get things done in QGIS, whereas in finding causes, I think that's very unrelated to QGIS itself. It's really more like seeing that there is somewhere a geospatial issue, might be in helping, I don't know, helping townships being mapped out, or helping refugee camps, or helping, I don't know, your local butterfly sanctuary. So it's really more about the interests that you personally have and that you see might be interesting for you to help with there. Hope that makes a little bit of sense.
I see, Fran, in the chat, you've said that the QGIS Stack Exchange is really useful for quick questions. Fran, would you like to give us a little bit more insight into the Stack Exchange if you use it? I hope your mic works.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm Fran. I work in the oil and gas industry in the UK. So we use QGIS for that purpose. In terms of the Stack Exchange, it is kind of just a forum for GIS in general, not generally just QGIS, but you can tag your questions with QGIS and it will relate to other users who use QGIS, and there's a lot of users on there that have obviously used QGIS for a long time, perhaps in kind of conjunction with other GIS software, and they can usually pretty quickly help you out with whatever issues you've got on. And you can, thanks for the thanks for the link in there. And I have used it just kind of even typing in Google what aspect I'm struggling with, and there's usually a conversation on there to help. And then you can obviously post your own questions, and I think there's then a format where it's almost like Reddit. If you get upvoted, you then become like a better user or something like that, but it is really useful.
Yeah, it is definitely. That's, I think, for a question, that's probably the place to go to get. If you have questions, technical question, you can go there, search there, or ask question. Important thing on Stack Exchange is first check if a question does not already exist before, or anywhere basically. Just check that you're not going to generate work for people that already have answered things. And this is one of the Stack Exchange is probably the most active answering kind of community. So the same thing I was mentioning before, if you want to get help to get things done, that's really easy to find that in QGIS. If you're wanting somebody to give you a cause, that's a bit of a different subject. So there is also some, just looking out for the link, there are some chats and mailing lists where you can join. So we have a mailing list for users, mailing list for developers. We have IRC chats and so on. And on top of it, there are obviously all the local chapters of the QGIS.org association. So maybe I could quickly explain how that part works. Basically, QGIS.org as an association is the worldwide body that tries to make QGIS thrive. So what I do with the rest of the PSC is we try to make the project run smooth, try to allocate resources where it's needed. We try to raise money. We try to spend the money that we raised. We try to get everything to run smoothly and keep the community happy and so on. And this is at a global level. And obviously, every country has specific needs, and that is where the local chapters of QGIS come into. And those local chapters are basically national associations that are not created by QGIS.org association. They are created by people in a country that is interested in having such a group. So it's a loose or less loose group of people that have decided that they want to become a user group in a certain country, and that they comply to certain standards that we say of inclusivity and no barrier and no privateness and so on. And if that is given and there is not already another user group in a country, then they can apply for becoming the official user group of the country, and then they'll start doing some events or some activities in the country itself.
Awesome
Yes.
stuff. That's great. I see Christoph in the comments. I don't know if your mic works. Do you want to ask your question, or shall I read it out?
Hi, I think out if you meant me. I think most of it you answered already, so I'm really happy with all the comments already. Took that, but anyway, if you don't mind elaborating a bit more on like also quality and those aspects, that would be nice to know.
Mm-hmm. So
the quality control, I think it's difficult to understand in the open source environment. How does that happen?
Mm-hmm. So there are various aspects at play here. The first thing is that whenever you want to contribute to QGIS itself. So let's close plugins to the side for a moment. Plugins have a different kind of life cycle. Let's consider the core QGIS, the one that you can install from QGIS.org. And to contribute to that, usually what happens is you are a programmer. And here, please bear with me. I'm just talking about the programming part. There is so much more that people can do in the community with translations and documentation and so on and so on. But here, I think we'll go quickly into the coding part, since the question comes to contributing plugins. The first thing that happens is usually you're a programmer, and you'll find that you want to start contributing QGIS. And what we usually suggest doing is either you have something that you want to fix yourself or you want to build yourself, or you go to the GitHub repository of the issues. We have some issues that are marked as paper cut, so the easy ones to have a look at, and then you start contributing to it. And that's the first step. Obviously, the code that you will be writing is not going to land in QGIS immediately, just because you contributed it. What we do have is a review process where more senior developers, more experienced people that have been a long time in the project will go over whatever code that's produced, and we'll give feedback on how to change things, how to make things better, or maybe just say, wow, amazing, never seen such a good contribution as a first contribution, and merge it into the main base code. So here we really have the first step of quality control is pull requests. So there is no code that lands, there is no contribution that goes into QGIS just like that without at least one of the core committers looking over it. That's the first part. The second part, more regarding like security you mentioned and code quality, is obviously by being open source, the code is there. So you can trust a company that tells you that they have no security issue and no bugs, of course, but that's just trust, and they telling you that that's the case. On the other end, and that's everywhere with open source software, you can actually have somebody, be it yourself if you have the knowledge, the know-how, or a company or somebody you trust, go over it and check it. So the whole process is really about having people double checking what gets into QGIS before it gets into QGIS. That's for the core part. Then for the plugin part, plugins are not maintained by QGIS itself. So the plugins are really something that a person creates and publishes themselves. What QGIS does is it gives a place to publish plugins, and that's the official repository. Obviously, by allowing people to put their plugins into that official repository and making them available to everybody, we have a bit of responsibility, because we are the vectors that allow this plugin to go around and to be installed everywhere. So we do need to take care there. And there is before the publication of plugins. So when a plugin is published by the author, there is a review process by some members of the QGIS community before the plugin gets deployed to the wide public. So there is a review process happening. And yeah, I think plugins are an immense asset for the QGIS project, because it's a very low or a much lower technical entry barrier to start building things in QGIS, and it's very easy to deploy them. Very easy, sorry, to publish them on the public repository. It's very easy to make updates after that, to publish your updates. So it's really, you're not tied to the development cycle of QGIS itself.
Awesome stuff. I see some questions in the live chat. I see that someone is asking, would there be support added for more geological apps, or integration for some of the geological apps? And then someone else is looking for a plugin to search vector layers. And of course, for both of these things, you can go and have a look at the official repository for the plugins. I mean, everything is listed there in a really nice manner with a description of what the plugin does. So I think before you go out and think, oh, I have to make a new plugin, or get together with some programmers because I don't have that kind of skill, go and have a look at what's already there, and see perhaps there's a plugin that does some of what you want, and maybe that can be built onto, and you can contact the builder of the plugin. So I think, definitely go to the plugin repository and have a good look at it before there's you start stressing that you're going to have to build your own plugin or find someone to do it for you.
Yes, absolutely. That's also a key thing of open source projects, is we try to not reinvent the wheel every time. We try to build on things that already are there and are good, because that will make the return on your invested time much bigger than just recreating the same thing about the same thing every time. Yeah. Regarding geological apps integration or something like that, that's a very specific question. I know there is a tool that deals with was made for geological data. I need to do a quick look. I'll get back to you by the end of the call. I saw before Maria raised her hand again in the chat. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, thank you. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So it's actually kind of just a clarification on this session, because I actually came with a very specific technical question, but thanks to the questions from the others, I have learned that I can direct them to various places. And I wanted to check, because I'm just new. I just started. I've been using QGIS maybe 10 years on and off, but now really engaging, because in South Sudan, being the newest country, we're actually collecting data now and using it a lot more interactively. So like for very tech questions, I guess I could go to the stack, but could I also use the Telegram group, for example?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We do have a very active Telegram group where you can ask questions as well. Stack Exchange is a good place. The IRC mailing list is also a good place.
IRC mailing list. Do we have that?
The mailing list, the user mailing list. Yes, also very good. I don't know. I put the link. Yes, there is a link that I put the Get Involved link. There you have all the. I'm not sure the Telegram is not in there yet, if I'm not wrong.
I'll put the link.
Where did you put the link? On YouTube or? because I'm on both places, so I'm trying to.
I put it in books,
okay.
but I'm sure that Amy can copy it over to YouTube as well.
I will, of course.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Maria, I think just your background is quite interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit more? Because you're saying as South Sudan as a country, being relatively new, etc., are you choosing to go open source for your data collection and stuff? What was your motivation there? What is the new stuff being done that you're really getting involved into? I'm just interested.
Okay, so just as a background, okay, first, South Sudan is the newest country in the world. So, as you can imagine, a lot is being done in terms of collecting information, and some of it in terms of QGIS is relatively new and continues needing updating, because even accessing the ground, with limited infrastructure and everything, we do have information that's been collected by the UN, but we have to keep on updating it. So I'm part of a health pooled fund program. We're providing health services in formal structures, but because of the limited access by the population, we have a project that's implementing community-based. So we're actually mapping where these community service providers are located relative to the health facilities. So trying to see the extent of health service coverage, and the strategy is that the health facilities provide is reachable or is within reach of 5 kilometers catchment area, and then the community is supposed to reach those beyond that. So we are trying to map where they are and trying to establish their relative location just to see, and it's actually ongoing. So as I speak, this is work I'm trying to map, and of course QGIS is the easiest because yes, it's financially accessible for sure, but of course then the use of the software I have to learn on the go. I have the basics, but now learning. So I'm currently using Okoruna, and so I'm a few versions behind what you're announcing is the latest, but it's working. So we're using this to generate the maps for where these are. And so what I'm referring to is the actual points. So they're using ODK to collect the data, and then it's uploaded directly. So then we have access, and then we are mapping where they are. So my questions were actually going to be related to, like, for example, how do I add distance? How do I show it as a feature, etc. But yeah, that's basically, it in a nutshell.
Oh, brilliant stuff. I'm sure Marco is like, oh, QField could be used for that.
Yes, QField. Besides doing advertising, QField, which sounds like the tool, a very good tool for what you're doing. Another thing that popped into my mind is that there are plenty of really good books about how to do things as well. And on the website, on the QGIS.org website, there is a section about books as well that you can have as a PDF as well, like buy and download as a PDF. So really, really good also way to have a little bit more a structured way. Like if you're more into structured kind of learning than books, we do have very good books as well. So
absolutely.
Okay, so maybe I'll reach out to you.
Pop me a Telegram
Yes,
message.
I'm saying, so maybe I'll reach out to you on Telegram. Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'll try and connect. Yeah. Thank you guys. This was most helpful, but then it's just also to maybe alert you that the title "Ask Me Anything" can really be so anything. I don't know if there's a way you can guide like the context. So no tech questions, no deep tech, but yeah, I don't know.
You can
just
ask tech questions as well. It's an Ask Me Anything. It's mainly. Usually we try to have the more generic question first, and then the really tech question that really address a specific problem, or like in the end, if there is not more generic question.
Okay, thank you.
And of course, Maria, if you do want to, at some point, we could actually have your own session on this, where we go through it technically and have our own session with a couple of experts, etc. Of course, I would schedule that, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, that's the point of the community, is we're all there, we're all interested in this. QGIS is the tool, but the community has the expertise to, help people out globally. So, I mean, if you're keen on that, pop me a message and we can get planning.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy. You're also on Telegram?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Alrighty.
So I'll stick you there. Thank you.
There
thank
are
you.
a couple of questions. I don't know if anyone in the room has a couple more questions. There are a couple more sort of like technically questions, but just for an overall question for now, it kind of works into that different countries and how things are open. One of our interns, Marco, asked, is there a way of controlling who does and doesn't have access to open source technology? For example, they were aware that Esri pulled some of their functionality in Russia with the conflict, etc. So how does open source work within that kind of frame?
Okay. Tricky question. No,
Yeah, it is.
If you want the realistic, pragmatic answer is no, you cannot block it. Because we are not tracking where things are coming from. I mean, QGIS downloading, it's on a website. You can just pass the installer to somebody else. So if you really want to get into blocking that, you can't really do anything that completely blocks things. So it's much harder. Like Esri can close their services, and they have licensing, so they can see where their licensee are and decide this licensee we close, we don't. With QGIS, we cannot do that kind of things. There are things that you could be doing, like blocking by IP location, and I know of other open source tools that have went that way into saying, well, the website, if your address is coming from a certain point, from a certain location, then you get blocked. On the other end, with a simple VPN or a bit of a more complex VPN, you'll get. I mean, honestly, I think that technically is for us almost impossible to deal with that, and that is why we chose back then when it all started to go a different way and to go more an inclusive way and a supportive way with the message that we put out, calling for leaders to take their responsibility seriously. But in a pure technical, I mean, it's so easy to go around, and we have so limited limited resources that I think that it would be really a waste of resources going that way, because it can be circumvented so easily.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions in the room? As I say, please remember to put your hand up. I will point you out and go ahead and ask for your question.
There are two more questions in YouTube, I saw.
From L0.
Yes.
Alrighty, let me see. So L0GIS asks, can I make geoprocessing tools as REST services like Esri?
That is a very interesting question. Well, yes, there is a way to publish. So geoprocessing in QGIS would be, for example, modular processes, and those can be published via QGIS server. So maybe a step back, QGIS is not only the desktop tool that you all know and you all love. It's mainly known because of that, but there is a web server or a map server that also is QGIS. And when you're using the map server, it's to do things like that, to publish geoprocessing tools, to publish maps, to publish services, WMFs, WMTS, WFS, all those kind of services that you can publish with QGIS. You configure everything in your QGIS desktop, and then you publish it on a server. And one of the things that you could be doing is publishing modular script or models QGIS models through a WPS processing service, and that we do something similar. What we do not have, and that is something that Esri is doing really greatly, is the whole ArcGIS online kind of thing, like this as click and drag and drop and click mapping online platform. That there's something that there is nothing there's nothing in the QGIS world that compares to that. But if you're really considering putting up infrastructure to serving geoprocessing tools, then QGIS server can help you out a lot, and it's a very solid solution. Hope that helps, Ed0. Oh, send an example. Yes, I'll look it up.
Righty.
The
Well,
other question was right up at the top. I think we skipped that one. And but how to provide attribute value from list. I don't understand that. Michael Shine.
That's an interesting question. I see another question's come up. If Michael can rephrase his question, perhaps, because I'm also struggling to understand what you're asking. But the next one is, what do you suggest for people to work with, the LTR or the freshest, newest release?
I know what I use. Okay, so let's maybe go quickly into the development process and release process mainly. So LTR are released once a year and get point releases after that. So usually an LTR would start with out of a fresh, what you write there, fresh release from the fourth bug fixing version. So you will have a new release coming out, like we just had last week. We had 3.26.0 coming out. That is what is called more like a candidate release being .0. Then we'll have .1 coming out in a month, .2 in 2 months, and so on. And we are looking into changing slightly this. But then eventually you'll get to .4. And if that release number that you were is a candidate for LTR, the .4 will turn into LTR. The newest release, they get released once a month for the bug releases. So the last little number, the .1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 at the end, or every 3 months you get a new release. So now we're in June. In September, we'll get 3.28 coming out. Obviously, the LTR releases move a bit slower because they only get bug fixing in them. So they will not have the latest and greatest features, but they will be more tested. So the idea is of the latest release is that it brings features that needs to get tested so that they get stabilized over time, and then they land into an LTR. And the LTR will be the one where you're sure that things are heavily tested and not only a bit lighter tested. The other thing is as well with LTRs is that if you're producing documentation with how to say, if you're using documentation with screenshots, then using latest to do that might get changed pretty quickly, or more quicker than an LTR. So what I'd suggest is that if you really are into doing maps by yourself and trying out new features and doing work, I mean, I do work all the time with the latest release. Last Friday, I was teaching a course and I actually updated QGIS during the course while I was demonstrating to people, because I was feeling really confident in QGIS and everything went smoothly. So I use regularly the latest release, but I absolutely would suggest if you're deploying it if you're deploying it into a company with multiple people, then LTR is probably the best way to go, because you'll get into much less issues because of being less tested, and that's the exact point of an LTR. Yeah, I mean, an LTR is just much more widely tested.
Cool. There is another question coming in from the live chat, but for now I see that Taras, you have your hand up. Do you want to ask your question? I see you recommended an article in the chat.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Actually, my article does not relate to the question that I want to ask, but my question relates to a topic of translation for QGIS, mainly desktop, what else, a website and documentation. I'm also in the list of with notifications for new version when the new version released, and I get all these updates. But still, I'm trying to figure out whether when I translate a piece of code or part of article, whether it will be still used in the newest documentation version. Whether if I translate something, will it not disappear in the future? So it doesn't. It makes sense in general to translate this part of code. And maybe a more general question about the workflow. So maybe the people who doesn't know about that, I have to sign for a special group in Transifex for QGIS, and then I have access to several domains. One of them, QGIS desktop documentation website, and then you simply choose the language that you are mostly good at, and then you proceed with all the translations. Am I right? And thank you.
Yes, correct. And first of all, thanks a lot for helping translating. As I mentioned before, that's a huge task that, I mean, we all think about contributing to QGIS. You need to be a software developer. That's not true at all. There are many other tasks, and translating is one of the hardest one for us, because I think, I'm not up to date with the numbers, but I think we are at about 40 languages which have more than 50% translation in QGIS or something like that. Don't quote me on that number, please.
This fact expires in 10 minutes.
Exactly, it expires in 10 minutes. But it's a huge amount of work that is happening there. And as Taras was saying, when he translates something, there is a chance that it gets changed in English later on, and that his translation gets lost. And that is why, Transifex helps with that. When the original string gets changed a bit, it still uses the old one and tells you that something might have to be changed. But that's a problem that there is everywhere when you're translating things. And that is why it's such an immense task, and why we're so happy about people like Taras that are helping out. And I see now Fran Edwards that is asking how you can get involved with translation. You basically sign up into Transifex. I'm looking up Fax. QGIS, just popping up the link. There we go. So you basically get involved onto the website called Transifex. You ask to join, and as Tara said, you choose which language you want to, you're proficient in and you want to translate to, and then you start translating. And usually every language has a responsible person, and that person will accept or not your commits. And thanks, Geoffrey. Yeah, that's the explanation how to get involved into translation. What I sent was more like the direct place where translation is actually happening. So if you're Fran, if you have more questions, go ahead, check out the link that Geoffrey sent. And if you immediately want to start translating, you can directly go to the link that I sent, create an account, and just starting typing.
Alrighty, I see we only have around 7 minutes left. This flew by, my goodness. I think we're gonna have to have another one next month. But there are a couple of last questions, and I think quite an interesting one from Alzero. Alzero asks, does QGIS have its own format of file geodatabase? I think the shaped file should be removed from existence. I agree. Or from the world. I know there is a Geopackage, but he kind of wants something special about QGIS. Does QGIS have its own particular format?
No, and that's the good thing, because we do not want to build things that are specific only to QGIS. And in general, in open source, we try to rely on standards. And that is why Geopackage is one of the formats that can be considered like the best formats to work with in QGIS. That's because it's a standard kind of thing, and that's why we build on that. I like the fact of removing shapefiles from the world. I don't think it's going to happen anywhere soon, but I think shapefile has the right to be there for some things, which is like there are so many tools that can read shapefiles, and so it's like my last resort when I'm giving something geospatial to someone that is using some random tool that only does shapefiles. Well, I'll just give to them shapefiles, but I'll never use a shapefile while working. To me, it'd be always like at a certain point, maybe someone really wants a shapefile, and then I'll just generate a shapefile at that moment. But to work in QGIS, actually, Geopackage is really good, really good idea. It's a small thing. You can have multiple tables in. You can have multiple data sets into one file. You can even put QGIS projects into the Geopackage, which makes it even easier. You're just distributing one file with all your data sets and the projects. So to me, it is a pretty special thing to be able to just use a standard format in such an advanced way. And obviously, the other thing that I suggest people looking into is PostGIS if you want a database. So if you're more considering like setting up a database, then PostGIS would be the other format. So these are kind of my two to-go things, like either it's a PostGIS or it's a Geopackage.
Brilliant stuff. I see Maria, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a wild one. So like now I have a country and I have layers, different layers, and then I have to generate maps for sub-regions. So let's say for South Sudan, there are 55 counties. Is there a way by just changing one filter that's common to the layers that, all features just change their filter? So like if I have focus on one, and if I change is there a way? I'm just wildly asking that, since I have to generate 55
So you want to generate
maps,
multiple
is there a
maps?
way that I just change one parameter and it automatically changes?
So you want to generate multiple maps, the same map for multiple different regions.
Maps. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that would be what's called an atlas.
Yes, correct.
In QGIS. A map atlas.
Atlas, there is such a feature.
Yes, of course.
Awesome.
Yes.
And how would I find that?
Well,
documents.
You create a print, like in 30 seconds, you create a print layout, and then in the print layout, you enable the atlas. So it's called the atlas-driven layout, and then you choose which one is your region layer.
Okay, I will try that. Thank you. I'm glad I asked.
No problem. There's a really nice question from Anas SH.
Okay, Anas, I don't know. Are you in the room? Do you want to ask your question? If not, I'll happily read it out. Within QGIS, why can't I edit any feature if the data source is E?
Well, that is not because of QGIS. If the data source is things are, I'm to me, e.i, I guess is a very vague concept. I mean, data sources in Esri can be services. They could be file geodatabase, personal geodatabase. Some of those actually can be edited with QGIS. So it's not really because you used to work with Esri software that you cannot open your data anymore in QGIS. You can even link the Esri services into QGIS. So I think it's actually not really the case anymore that you can't edit features with data that's coming from Esri. The point being more that if you really want to work in an environment where you have Esri softwares and QGIS software working on the same data sets, then you should probably be using a data type that is shared by both. Multi-user editing. So now you're saying multi-user editing the same time editing. Well, that depends really on what the backend is. It's not really just because it's easy or not. It really depends if it's a file geodatabase or a personal geodatabase or whatever the thingy that they put on top of databases are. It's called, I don't remember. That really depends on what the data provider is. If you're doing multi-user editing anyway, my suggestion would be to go with the database and have some PostGIS there, and then you could even link. You could use. Okay, you have Oracle. That's another point. Whew, now I'm really over-asked. I haven't done Oracle in the last 15 years. I'd have to readdress you with this question to Stack Exchange. I think that's a perfect question to really go to Stack Exchange, spec it out exactly. What do you have? What version of Oracle? What are you trying to achieve? And then somebody there will for sure already have had the same issue.
Alrighty. I unfortunately have to bring us to a close. It's the end of our hour, and we have another session just right after this. Our speaker's waiting in the next room. So I can see there are a couple of last questions, etc. I would suggest that perhaps next month we have a similar session where we can just chill and talk and ask questions. And if not, then please do address your questions. There are so many things that we've shared: the Telegram channel, the Facebook groups, the Stack Exchange. So if you do have any questions or any comments, reach out on those community forums. That's the point of them. So thanks everyone for joining. Oh gosh, I have a lot of feedback from somewhere. And yeah, we're going to then move on to the next session. Thank you, Marco.
Thanks, Amy. Pleasure.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.